Hello, U.S. history students, and welcome to the first of 3 lessons this week dealing with the Cold War. We're going to be in the Cold War over the next couple weeks, and this lesson is going to review some stuff from World War II and set up what we're talking about in the next lesson dealing with the beginning of the Cold War. So it's a good bridge lesson here, okay? We're going to review some stuff we talked about at the end of World War II and set up where we're headed the rest of this week and really with the rest of this unit. Okay, now as we go through this presentation, you may take your own notes, but I highly recommend that you use the worksheet that I emailed to you all, especially the first part here, because there's going to be a map and you're going to have to label some countries. But after that, if you want to take your own notes, that's fine. Be sure you are getting this information down because we're going to have a little quiz on this material and it is not open notes, okay? So let's talk about what Europe looked like after World War II, all right? So here's our map of Europe. Now, some of these countries you recognize, some of them are brand new. We're going to start here. Of course, this is Great Britain, our island nation right there. Okay, not much has changed there. Then down here, of course, this is France. Now, here we go. This used to be Germany, okay? Notice that Germany is now divided. Now, it was divided into 4 sections at the end of World War II, but 3 of those sections are going to combine and form West Germany, okay? There's West Germany. And then right next door, well, hold on, we'll get there in a second, but right here in the center, okay, this is Switzerland. All right. Then we got Italy, the boot right there. Austria is right here. And then here's East Germany, okay? Right next door to West Germany, here's East Germany. And then here's Poland. And then this big guy over here, well, there's Czechoslovakia. And then the big guy over here is the Soviet Union. And notice the Soviet Union has extended its control over these territories right here. We'll talk more about those in just a second, okay? So these are the big countries in Europe that we're going to be dealing with, especially in this first introductory period on the Cold War. And there they all are again. All right, be sure you get those labeled. Now, when World War II ended, who won? The Allies. The Allies won. Good. Now, who were the Allies? Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and the United States. Remember, they're all on the same side. Also, at the end of World War II, we get the formation of a new organization, the United Nations. Now, if you're following along on the worksheet I gave you, there is no space for the United Nations. If you want to put it over in the margin somewhere, or maybe you want to copy it down on your own piece of paper or something like that. But the United Nations is replacing the League of Nations. And the United Nations is formed in 1945 to prevent future wars, specifically to prevent nuclear conflict. At the end of World War II, we used those bombs on Japan at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We are very much concerned about the use of atomic weapons in another war, and we want to prevent that. The United Nations is going to be stronger than the League of Nations. The League of Nations didn't have an army. It didn't have U.S. support. Guess what the United Nations has? It has an army and it has U.S. support. And the army is supposed to be made up of all the contributing nations. Okay? So the UN is replacing the League of Nations. Also, at the end of World War II, and we talked about this at the Yalta Conference, Germany gets portioned into East and West. Now, it gets divided, I mentioned this just a second ago, it gets divided into 4 sections. The United States gets a section, France gets a section, Britain gets a section, and the Soviet Union gets a section. That Soviet section is Eastern Germany, okay? East Germany is dominated by the Soviet Union. It will not have a democratic government. The 3 Western sections, the French section, the United States section, and the British section, they are going to merge together and they are going to be democratic. And France, Great Britain, and the United States uphold what they agreed to do in that a few years after occupation, they resume self-control. Okay, once they get out of the post-World War II, confusion and things like that, West Germany will become a democratic government and it will resume self-control, which was part of the deal all along. East Germany is not going to be that lucky. East Germany is going to be under the control of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, by this time, by the end of World War II, has occupied most of Eastern and Central Europe. Okay, and you can see that on the map here. There's the USSR. They've taken over Poland. Okay, they've taken over Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. Okay, Albania. All those areas right there are under Soviet control. And the reason Soviet Union had done this is because they had been pushing back on the Germans as they moved westward. Okay, as they're pushing in against Germany from the east, and as they're moving westward, they're taking over all this territory, and they are basically controlling it and putting puppet governments in these countries. And now that the war is over, they are not showing any signs of leaving. Okay, the USSR is going to stay in this territory. They've taken this land as they moved against Germany. Like I said, as Stalin takes this land over, he sets up communist governments. And these communist governments become totally dependent on the Soviet Union. They become satellite nations of the Soviet Union. They depend on and they're controlled by Stalin and the USSR. All right, and Stalin is not going to let them go. So there's no chance of them becoming democratic now that we're done with World War II. Stalin's grasp of this territory and the fact that he is not letting go is very much concerning to us. And we develop our own policy called containment. We do not like the way that the Soviets are grasping at this territory. So, our decision, we're going to contain communism. We're going to stop Soviet influence. We don't want them making alliances, especially with weaker nations. All right. And instead of the Soviets stepping in and taking over these weaker nations, we're going to step in. Okay. We're going to block Soviet influence by making alliances ourselves and supporting these weaker nations. That's our plan. Is we're gonna be the ones that step in, okay? Because we see what the Soviet Union, we see what Stalin is doing. Now, two very important pieces of this containment plan, and again, be sure you get these down. There's not room on if you're following along on the worksheet I gave you. They're not going to be on the worksheet. So try to put them in the margin somewhere or something like that. But there's two very important pieces of this containment policy. One is the Truman Doctrine. The Truman Doctrine says anywhere anyone is fighting against communism, we will be there to help. That is what the Truman Doctrine says, is that anywhere anyone's fighting against communism, we're going to be there to support them. A good example of this is the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan said the U.S. would provide economic resources, aka money, to help European countries rebuild after World War II. Now, two things happen. Number one, it stops communism from spreading. Again, this is part of our containment policy. Number two, if we're giving them money, not only are they going to stand up against communism, but they're going to be loyal to us. They're going to stay on our side. So these are two key terms that we're going to associate with containment. Containment is stopping the spread of communism. The Truman Doctrine says anywhere anyone's fighting against communism, we'll be there to help. And a good example of that is the Marshall Plan, where we're giving money to rebuild European countries. Okay? And if we want to get more specific, to be honest with you, we're giving money to rebuild Western European countries so that they stop communism and they stay on our side. Now, with things heating up here and with this division across the land, all right, former Prime Minister Winston Churchill is here in the United States in 1946. And he sees what's going on in Europe. He sees what's going on in the world. And he's at a graduation. He's at a college graduation, and he makes a speech. And in that speech, Churchill mentions an iron curtain coming down across Europe. He can see the division between communism and democracy and capitalism. And what this Iron Curtain is going to do, it's going to separate the nations in the Soviet spheres, and that would include those Soviet satellites from the capitalist democracies of the West. Okay, Churchill sees this coming. And like I said, the Soviet sphere includes those satellites. And those satellites are those countries in Europe where Stalin has already set up pro-communist governments. And here on the map is the Iron Curtain. And you can see, and if you want to go back to the map that you've filled in, the Iron Curtain is going to start. It's going to be that dividing line between West Germany, East Germany. It's going to go down there around Czechoslovakia and separate Austria and Hungary. There's your Iron Curtain. This is the dividing line that Churchill has talked about. Okay, this side is going to be democratic and capitalist. This side is going to be communist. Now, real quickly, the last thing, and again, this is not part of your notes, but I want you to jot it down, is I want to give you just a real quick summary of the two sides during the Cold War. Like I said, on one side, you got communism. The main power under the communist flag is going to be the Soviet Union. We're also going to see China become communist. We're going to see other countries in Asia become communist. But the main country is going to be the Soviet Union. They stand for a classless society where everybody is seen as equal. Since it is a classless society and everybody's seen as equal, you work to benefit everybody. It's work for the benefit of all. And to make sure that society remains classless and everybody remains equal, the government is going to take an active role in owning farms, businesses, and factories. That way, it can ensure work for the benefit of all, and it can ensure equality, resulting in a classless society. Now, on the other hand, you got capitalism. And you're going to see it's a marked difference between communism and capitalism. If the main country under the communist flag is going to be the Soviet Union, the main country under the capitalist flag is going to be the United States. We say it's okay for society to have classes but your classes should be based on how well or how hard you work. Okay? That is often what determines your class. You work for individual benefits. All right? That's one of the things, if you remember, we talk about this in modern world history, okay? The differences between communism and capitalism. People will tend to work harder for what is theirs. And that's where communism falls apart, because if everybody's going to be equal, you don't have to work as hard. In fact, you don't have to work at all, because the government's going to make sure you're getting what you need, okay? In capitalism, capitalism says no, you work for your benefits. And those are your benefits. So you're going to work hard to maintain your benefits. Now, by the way, capitalism is not opposed to charity or helping those that are in trouble. But you can't stay that way forever. Okay, the idea is we will help you until you get back on your feet. And then you're going to be working for your own benefits. Okay. And then because of that, there is private ownership of farms, businesses, and factories. Again, people are going to work harder. They're going to take care of what is theirs. If the government is stepping in and taking away part of your farmland or taking away profits from your business or profits from your factories to make sure that everybody is equal and that everybody's benefiting, people are going to have a problem with that, and people aren't going to work as hard. Okay, so private ownership of farms, business, and factories is a big deal, right? So real quickly, those are the differences between communism and capitalism. All right, that's going to be the setup as we move forward into the Cold War. In fact, this whole lesson is basically showing the division that is erupting in the world after World War II between the communist East and the capitalist democratic West. The communist East is going to be headed by the Soviet Union. The capitalist West is going to be headed by the United States. And this is the setup as we move forward into the Cold War.